Okay, hello everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have three wonderful principal investigators here who will be talking about how the Our Ocean and COVID-19 project, facilitated by eOceans, is taking place and advancing in New Zealand. So I will pass it off for introductions.
Awesome. So, hello everybody. My name is Laura Mcguire. I am originally from the UK and have a passion for adventure, life-affirming expeditions for personal growth and the outdoors. I have a background and an MSc in outdoor education, and one of my core beliefs is in ocean stewardship and sustainability. I've now worked in the dive industry or managed community-led marine conservation and monitoring expeditions for the last 10 years. And I currently am working for Dive to Takaka, which is up in Northland in New Zealand. And my drive to be involved in this project is to connect myself and others to the place on which all life depends, which is the ocean. And I want to inspire people to make sustainable changes within their own lives to protect the longevity of life and the ocean and all of its inhabitants.
Hi everyone, my name is Roxane de Waegh. I'm originally from Belgium, but I grew up a bit all over the world, including a couple countries in Africa, Congo, Senegal, South America, and Chile and Argentina, Canada, the States, and Singapore. And over the last 7 years, I've been working as a field scientist and a marine biologist in remote coastal communities, including the Galapagos, the Solomon Islands, Myanmar, Bahamas, and most recently Timor-Leste, which is where I met Laura. And right now I'm currently pursuing a PhD in New Zealand. And I'm exploring the effectiveness and resilience of integrated conservation and development projects in small island developing states. And my passion is really to understand the interactions of globalization and climate change, and to create strategies that hopefully can support both the social and the ecological well-being of remote coastal communities that are, facing challenges that are both humanitarian and natural.
Hi everyone, I'm Laura Jordan, or Jordan Smith, and I have been in New Zealand for just over a year, but I have been studying mostly sharks and stingrays and other marine creatures for quite a long time. I finished my PhD in 2008. So I have worked with mostly sharks and stingrays, but other species like penguins and fishes and dolphins and other things. Most of my research has been about sensory systems and also swimming behavior and body shape, and how that influences their ability to move around their environment and find their prey and locate other things that they're traveling for. I've been living in the US for most of my life, but I've done research on both the east and west coasts of the United States, and I've been teaching at various universities and marine labs around the United States, most recently at the University of San Diego and the Shoals Marine Laboratory. And I also have an organization called World Below the Waves, where I do various types of outreach and education to people of all ages. And I am looking forward to getting more involved with the marine science community here in New Zealand. I'm interested in this project to help connect scientists and other people in the community to kind of continue to build bridges between what's going on in the world and what different people are involved in seeing the changes and helping to decide what sorts of a future we're going to have in terms of dealing with the ocean and with ourselves.
Hi everyone, I'm Christine. I am so impressed with the skill set of the PIs that we've just heard from. This is amazing. I'm Christine Wardpage. I'm the founder of eOceans, and I'm a marine scientist. I've led global projects around the world, manta rays, sharks, and such, but this is the first one that is being co-led by principal investigators in countries that this has just turned out to be a very collaborative project, and I think it's amazing. So I'm on the call because I'm the founder of eOceans. We also have Ronnie on the call. And I'm leading the PI, I'm leading the global aspect with the other PIs on this project, but I'm also in charge of developing the app that everyone will be using and have designed it. So next slide, please. So eOceans, what is eOceans? eOceans was founded with the belief that our ocean can be more exciting and valuable if we make faster and more collaborative discoveries. And so eOceans is the platform to make that happen. Next slide. So the way that it works is when you go to the ocean, we see that the app is sort of like an activity tracker and observation logger to take little tiny pieces of the puzzle. So the ocean is very dynamic and variable, changing all the time. So if you go out to the ocean, the chances of a marine scientist seeing what you see is very little. And so the idea is that every observation that you make is a tiny little piece of the puzzle, and eOceans stitches that together so that we can have a better picture at local, regional, national, and global scales. And so here today, we're talking about the Our Ocean and COVID-19 project, which is the first project to use the platform. And I'll let, I think Laura goes next on the next piece to explain more about the project.
Yeah, so just giving a sort of overview of what's going on so far in New Zealand with COVID-19. We've spent a total of about 5 weeks at level 4 lockdown, where people were pretty much all in their homes, as I'm sure you all are aware. And then a total of about 5 weeks at level 3 for Auckland in particular. The other parts of the country spent only about 2 weeks in level 3. But during those times, there have been there is still a lot more information that we're hoping to discover, but so far we've seen some differences in terms of the variability of sea cargo, which has been specific to each port, but overall there have been decreases in overall there have been decreases in activity at the ports, and there have been, while the exports have remained relatively similar in New Zealand, there have been decreases in the imports compared with the last couple of years. Seafood, though, specifically has seen a decrease in exports, while things like meat and dairy and fruit have increased, sort of filling that gap to give the overall similar export level. And then in terms of things like electricity, there have been decreases in use of electricity and fuel supplies during the lockdowns, and with that, a decrease in air pollution. There has also been, of course, a dramatic decrease in travel, which is the most dramatic and prolonged change that we have seen here. And so in terms of how that's affecting, all these things are affecting people and moving forward, there has been sort of a movement to go to more of a green, environmentally friendly type of return to sort of rebuilding, and instead of returning to normal, how things were done in the past. And with that, sort of an increase in self-sufficiency and increase in focus, of course, right now on local travel versus international travel. So it will be interesting to see how all of these things are affecting the various species, marine species in the ocean. Go next slide.
Okay, so most of my data collection has taken place in my place of work, which is the Poor Knights Islands, which is a marine protected area situated in Northland, on the North Island in New Zealand. So I work as a diving instructor and take tourists out, or New Zealand tourists out, to do guided dives or snorkels amongst these islands. There's a map on the slide there. So they're the 2 islands, and all of those, it's a dive site map actually. So all of those are dive sites that we visit. So what we have seen recently is we've seen Orca. There's a resident pod of Orca that have come in, and they actually came in recently to Nungaroo Estuary, which is where there is a school, and they put on quite a show, teaching their young how to fish. So maybe we can watch that video now. Awesome. So this is the school in Nungaroo actually have a bell that they ring whenever cetaceans come through this part of the estuary. So on this particular day, it was the first day of spring here, and the orca came in and all the kids were out watching, and it was just a beautiful sight for people. Cool, thank you. So alongside the orca, we've also seen more whales. So we've seen some humpbacks and some Bridie's whales, and we've also seen common dolphins, and that tends to be because the ocean is quite abundant at this time of year with lots of plankton, and there's also some yearly migrations that are happening. So there's quite a lot of travel that we see on the way out to the islands. And then one final point is that just with the school holidays, what was quite interesting is that more Kiwis have been coming to explore the poor nights. So actually the numbers were up in October than on previous years, which is quite exciting because that does mean that New Zealanders are coming out to explore their own backyard. So, and just witness the abundance of all the things we have. Or I should probably mention, we also saw a rare nudibranch, which is yet to be identified. There's lots of seals around at the moment. And of course, there's our usual abundance of species like blue mau, Leuphigena snapper, scorpionfish, and trevally. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. So over here where I'm living, I'm at the North Shore, which is about maybe 30 minutes without traffic from the main CBD of Auckland. And here we actually see the same pod of orca that Laura was talking about. They actually travel up and down this area, and I don't have a cool video to share, but they're amazing to see. And so basically these are sightings from just walking down the beach with my dog and trying to get the app out to some beach dwellers as well. But we see a lot of people doing water sports, especially during level 3 when we were still allowed to go out and do some water sports. During level 4, we actually weren't able to. But level 3 and level 2, there are a bunch of windsurfers, a lot of kite surfers, especially on the East Coast. We don't get many waves, but we do have a lot of wind, an onshore wind, which is perfect for windsurfing and kite surfing and sailing. So definitely a lot more sightings of those when no one could go to work. But then they dropped down again when level 4 picked back up, and level 3, there's some different restrictions. I don't think sailboats can go out, but during level 2, then we saw the sailboats come out again. And I'm an ocean swimmer, so I do a lot of swimming, and I've actually seen a lot of stingrays during level 3. And that was probably a few months ago. And now that the water's getting a bit warmer, the water's getting a bit more murky with all the spring rains coming in. So I'm not able, the visibility has dropped and I can't see many stingrays anymore. But whenever we see the orca come in, they're hunting the rays. So that's a good sign. Apparently there's plenty of them. And the sightings of the ocean swimmers there, just, people loving the cold water for all the health benefits, but now there's a lot more swimmers. I should probably add more to this current slide now that the water's up to 16, 17 degrees. So it's not just the crazy winter swimmers. You have anywhere from kids and old women and men tempting their fate as well. But yeah, so just a lot of ocean enthusiasts up on the North Shore, a lot of ocean athletes.
So we want to track with this app, we want to track in real time from the human perspective, and to examine how the marine tourist industry in New Zealand will evolve in a post-pandemic world, and what effects the current global disruption will have on the ocean and its inhabitants.
And on a personal level, I'm also interested in seeing the effectiveness of the eOceans app and see how this application can actually be used for the future tourist, which I'm hoping is a scientific tourist who aims to understand both the social and the ecological impacts of tourism. So there's a big push for travelers to actually, in the future, to travel with a purpose. And I'm hoping that eOceans can build the incentive for travelers to take their voyages and explore with a scientific aim, so that they're understanding the impacts of their travels, but also how their destinations have changed over the last year or maybe 2 years. Who knows when mainstream tourism will be open again. And especially how travel will be impacting remote coastal communities, and specifically the remote coastal communities of the South Pacific that are closest to New Zealand, since those will be the ones that are most available to New Zealanders. And I think Christine and Ronnie have said that they might be developing a simple app or a version of the app that's quite simple, so that it can be used in areas where technology is a bit more limited than New Zealand and other Western societies.
And finally, I'm also hoping to see this program as another bridge between scientists and other members of the public, the ocean-going public in particular, to be able to increase mutual understanding and progress toward goals for the ocean use and conservation on both local and global scales. So this global project is happening in 20 other countries so far, and here is a map of existing eOceans relationships from past projects. And we want to be able to get a similar picture, but on a daily type of basis with our focus around New Zealand and collaborations around the world.
No, we don't hear the volume. Of course, we practiced this before and it worked. There we go. If you can go back, yeah.
The ocean economy is valued at $1.5 trillion per year, providing essential products and services to 1 billion people. Many threats, like plastic pollution, ship collisions, and overfishing, have significant costs. On the other hand, there is ample opportunity to celebrate. Billions have been spent on conservation. Species have come back from the brink of extinction. Fisheries have improved. Tourism has value. Protected areas have grown. Although marine researchers work hard to track these changes, a lack of data means their discoveries often lag years behind ocean change. eOceans can help. Our platform was designed by Dr. Christine Ward-Page, an expert in crowdsourcing ocean data. Our mobile app allows all ocean explorers to become scientists by simply logging what they see. Our analytical tools provide researchers with real-time insights to monitor oceans by species, areas, and issues. Through our community feature, explorers follow how their data are being used to answer complex questions. eOceans is on a mission to help communities and researchers make real-time discoveries to celebrate success, or to mitigate and adapt to change on timescales that keep pace with business, society, and ocean change. Contact eOceans to get a team started in your community today. For the oceans, for us. The ocean.
Okay. Wow. Thank you so much to all three of you. We are extremely grateful for your participation in this project. It wouldn't be possible without you. And it's really exciting to hear how the three of you each metabolize this project and how it relates to the work you're currently doing. And also to hear what's happening in New Zealand. It's a great perspective for us to gain while we're here in Canada. So I'm going to take a moment to go over the app, the tool that is being used to facilitate this project. And we really want you to think of this app as your activity tracker, your personal digital log that you track your time and effort while you're out on the ocean and simultaneously share to science of what you're seeing. So our call out or our call to action for you today is to download the app, track your activities and log your observations, share what you're seeing, and then follow along as the project progresses. So before you go to take your first ever eOceans data collection, you will have to decide between a single or a transect option, or the auto track feature. A single observation is great to capture a moment in time. It's also great when you are, in between building sandcastles on the beach and you think, I really want to contribute to science right now, as Roxy pointed out, that tourists with a purpose, or the auto track or transect function is great when you are doing an activity that'll take you from location A to location B. So say if you are walking the beach, doing a beach cleanup, or if you are on a boat, either for leisure or research purposes, you can set the transect function and it will track your time, which equates to your effort, for as long as you are doing that activity. And then throughout that activity, you just continue to log observations. So moving from left to right on the screen here, these are the next steps you'll take in the app. And first, it will require you to take a photo. This photo does not have to be everything you see, and you certainly don't have to get up and close and personal to other people or animals. We're really just asking for a photo to set the stage, give us context as to what your observation is going to tell us. And then when you take a photo, it will stamp your location, your latitude and longitude, as well as your time and your date. And this really ensures the real-time function of your observation. And then choose your activity from a drop-down list. What are you doing as you're making this log? And that also affects the context. Your observations change dramatically between whether or not you are walking the beach, sailing, or scuba diving, for instance. Next, you're going to be asked to identify any species or animals that you are seeing, as well as the number of those species. So we have a drop-down list of about 500,000 species from the WORMS database. There's both common and scientific names in there. And there's also an option if you do not know the species that you're looking at, but you know it is a shark, for instance. It would show up as shark-unknown. And then, yes, how many of that species are you seeing? Now, if you don't see any species, if you don't see any animals, that is still a very valuable log, and you would just hit skip. And that would bring you to the humans. Identifying other humans that you are seeing, as well as other human-generated pollution, is just as important as the species, because in this project, and for eOceans data as a whole, we're really looking at how wildlife and humans are interacting in the same space. So for humans, it can be other kayakers or ocean swimmers, for instance, and then you would choose from a drop-down list and count how many of those people are doing that activity, as well as pollution. So one thing that we've been getting reports of a lot of is PPE, or personal protective equipment, like masks and gloves, being one of those pollution items that people are recording. Our human list is not exhaustive, so if there's ever anything you see on there, if there's anything you see and it's not on our list, please do let us know, and we will adjust accordingly. And you know, a very valid point to make is if you were on a clean, pristine beach with nobody around and no animals to report, that is still a valuable log. That is still a valuable data point, because you are recording those zeros or those absences of things that are not there, as well as marking your effort. Lastly, you're going to be asked to add notes to your observation. So this will be where you can add personal notes for your own log about, you know, it was a great day out on the water, or, you know, you had a crazy cool orca encounter, or scientific notes. So if you are using the app for your own research purposes, as well as we will be adding a feature where you can use hashtags to alert us to something important. So for instance, if you saw a whale and you recorded that, and you also recorded some ghost gear, some loose fishing gear, but what was really happening was there was a whale entanglement, and that's where you would describe this. It would be hashtag whale entanglement, and that would alert us. And we're currently building the systems in place to be able to act upon those alerts. And then lastly, you will check that everything you wrote was accurate and to your liking and safe. And there you have it. You have your first ever log to the eOceans database. So coming soon on the app, you will also see a community channel, and this feature will be released very shortly. This is where you can follow along with the regional efforts that other people are recording, what they're recording in their observations, as well as any teams you might be following. So you will soon see a team for your region. There will probably be a couple teams for New Zealand based on the regions. And then you can join that and follow along and see what the progress is for that data collection. So accompanying the app is a web application. So this is accessible on your browser via your desktop or laptop. And on this dashboard is where you can see the global effort of eOceans data collection. And that's represented here. You know, you're seeing Canada right now. You're seeing Atlantic Canada specifically. So on the app, you're going to see your region of what's happening in your regional area, but on the dashboard, you'll be able to see what the global effort is. This will also be where you can see your past observations and edit them. This is a spot for you to add photos retroactively. So say you took a log on a dive boat about the dive that you just did. Well, you obviously didn't take your cell phone down there with you, so you might have some pictures from your underwater camera, for instance, which you can add to your observations to add even more context to your logs. And then a feature we will be offering is to upgrade to a pro user. And this is where if you are a researcher and you are interested in collecting data for your own project, and you would like to be able to download that data and analyze it yourself, that is something we will also be offering for an upgrade. So one key important point to make about the eOceans platform is that your data is yours. You own it. So the only people who get to see the specifics of your logs are yourself and the teams you choose to share it with. So specifics, thinking of exact GPS location. We don't share that publicly because we want to make sure we're protecting potentially any endangered species or special or culturally important places. So the only people who would see that information is yourself and the teams you're sharing it to. So right now on the app, you are agreeing to share it to the global Our Ocean and COVID-19 project. But soon, as the app gains popularity and use, we're hoping that other people will use the app to answer their own research questions. And then as an individual, you can sign up and align with researchers and teams that you feel align with yourself. So if you're very much interested in plastic pollution and there's a team doing that, that's when you would manually join that team, and then any data that's relevant to them would be filtered to them for their own project. And I will pass it off to our wonderful PIs to just go over the frequently asked questions.
So the first thing that is often asked is whether it works offline or not. So it does work offline. So if you download while online and then sync when online, but you can collect your data offline, if that makes sense. So that's really useful. For instance, that's a feature that I use on the boat, because often you go in and out of service, so you can just still use it and then send it off as soon as you get your signal.
The second frequently asked question is, do you need to take a photo of everything that you see? And no, not necessarily. Just take a photo of the area so that you can at least provide some context, and all the other little things you can log on the app. So that's really helpful for me. And when I was taking photos of, a wide shot of the beach, for example, instead of trying to zoom in on every surfer or kite surfer or dog walker or swimmer, I can just take a big widespread photo and then write down every little thing I see.
And finally, record a few or hundreds of observations, even if no animals are seen. So going back to what Ronnie said, even if you don't see things, that is still useful data, because that tells us that there were no other things in that area at that time.
And we just want to finish off by asking you and your friends and other organizations that you might know of to become a partner if you know of an NGO around, or like Laura's organization Below the Waves, any big organization like that, or even small grassroots group that wants to become a partner. We really encourage you to do so. The other Laura and I used to work for an NGO known as Blue Ventures, and we're trying to get them to jump on board. So yeah, if you know of an organization that might be interested, just spread the word and give them a little intro by sharing this video, and hopefully they're interested to join as well. And as an individual, you can definitely join even just today within the next few minutes by joining or liking one of the Facebook groups or YouTube or Instagram and Twitter. It's everywhere. And you can help by sharing local news, typing in something that you've seen, tagging your friends in a photo, whatever you like to do and whatever social media you prefer. eOceans is basically on all of them. And yeah, just I think all of us would like to say thank you for participating during this webinar and listening to us.
Thank you so much, everyone. That was great. I would like to say that I think we have a vet clinic even in Australia that is an ocean partner. So even though we, not directly ocean related, but, part of an ocean community. So that wants to know what's happening in the ocean and to support local research. So it's quite interesting. I have very messy notes. I wanted to make a comment about the app. The way that Ronnie shared it is much more about the citizen science engagement, but it can also be used from a scientific perspective. So if you think of singles as, because there's scientists on the call, so I thought I would raise this, is that if single is the equivalent of stationary point count. So that's one method that is often used in scientific literature. Methodologies, and also belt transects or roving transects. So there's many different ways so you can do standardized surveys instead of just opportunistic surveys, not just. So can someone tell me about when at lockdown, were scientists still allowed to go out, and what kind of level, how have the lockdowns affected science in New Zealand? We talked about how it's affected recreation and tourism, but were scientists still allowed out? Anyone know?
From at least from my supervisors, who I think if anyone had the option to go out, they seem to have quite high levels and permits. They were not allowed. And one of my supervisors is an insanely good sailor, and he was quite upset because he couldn't go on his sailboat either. So I think just the rules that, from what I know in New Zealand, apply to everyone, regardless of your position.
So has there been a push maybe for more remote science? So in Western Canada, there was a research paper that showed that, the lowered noise associated with ships had an impact on whales, for example. Have you noticed anything, like, was there any remote science to document that, or that you're aware of?
I've looked to see if there was any data like that available, and I haven't found anything yet, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Right.
So I would assume that there have been people trying to track as much as they could during that time, but like Roxy mentioned, I don't think that they were allowed to be out at sea.
Right.
The only boats that were out at sea basically were ferries and cargo ships during that the most dramatic part of the lockdown, as far as I know.
And the sailboats, when you said, Roxane, I think it was you that said that, people could go back out to sea for some activities, but sailing was still restricted. What's the reason for that?
I think that was because the sailboats go further out.
Okay, so it's a risk.
Yeah, it's a risk of being swept away by some crazy winds or some currents, and whereas the kite surfers and the windsurfers and the ocean swimmers stay along the coast, because I think there's also limited. Well, at level 4 there was no Coast Guard, and I think at level 3 there were, but not as many on duty or something like that.
Right.
So yeah, I think just recreational sailing was only allowed on level 2.
Okay.
And just to add to Roxy, there was an interesting rule on level 3 that was saying that, like, if the sport was new to you, that you should not be partaking in it. Right. So like divers could, for instance, go out, or spearos could go out, but not only if you had done it before, not beginners.
Don't start up on something. They don't want to be doing rescues. Yeah. I think that's, you guys did such a good job at explaining, the activities along the coast as it relates to the policy. I just think that was a great explanation of that. The other thing I'm trying to think of is like the connectivity. So, you had orcas as an example, but if orcas are being seen in these places, do you think that it's related to a lack of human activity? So is there any studies on like where they're going so that it could be related to the number of boats, whales. So I'm just thinking about the connectivity across if all of a sudden there's less boats on the water and you're an orca and now you can go wherever you want, or will you still go to those same places? Like that channel that you showed, Laura, the channel you showed, is it frequent? There are usually boats in there. It seemed to be empty at that time. So
that is always empty. Yeah, that's there's maybe some small boats that just travel, but it's an estuary, so the water comes in, and it's more of just a place that boats can then sail out to the break. There's actually a surf break on the end there if the waves are going and if the wind's blowing in a certain way. So they have been seen in there before. A key person to get involved with that there's a Professor Ingrid Visser is the orca expert, and she lives actually down the road, so she would probably be the person to know more about their whereabouts and whether their movements have been affected by COVID, I would say.
Right. I wonder if it's like a sub question, you know, like, because as marine scientists, you're tagging or you're keeping track of the whales, but you don't tend to keep track of also the human activities. So it may be a good collaboration between you three and the whale experts to actually like a sub question specifically looking at whales and the use across New Zealand. Interesting. Other questions?
As Roxy said, there have been a lot of sightings of the orcas around this area further south, closer to, you know, the main port of Auckland. And I think, well, I haven't been here that long, so I don't have a great historical reference, but I don't think I saw very many, if any, last year at this time of people posting that they were seeing orcas. And for a couple of weeks, it was almost every day people were sighting the orcas right along here and coming into the bay as well.
And this is a note. I was just in South Island last week in Christchurch, and I went there the first time in March or end of February, right before level 4 lockdown. And we saw Hector dolphins, which are these really tiny dolphins, and like endemic to the South Island of New Zealand. And when we saw them, they were extremely shy. We saw them from a distance, and then we couldn't find them again. And that place that we see them, that's usually where there's a lot of cruises that come by. And last weekend we saw them, and I swam with them for about an hour, and we saw 3 different pods, and they were so friendly, not shy at all. They were coming up to, there's only 2 tiny boats out, but they were going up to both of the little boats and just staying around us the entire time. So I don't know if that's, you know, because there's been no cruises at all for the last 6-7 months, so now they're friendly again, or if that's some kind of behavioral change. But even the locals that we were on the boat with, they said that was so rare, and the Hectors never do that. They're meant to be one of the shyest dolphins.
So this sounds interesting to bring to the attention of other like marine mammal scientists, I would say.
Yeah.
Cool. Other questions? I have more questions, of course. About illegal fishing. So, and fishing inside of marine protected areas, or any sort of interaction with marine protected areas. I know New Zealand is well known for marine protected areas and long-standing, fairly well enforced marine protected areas. But have you heard or seen anything related to illegal fishing or inside of marine protected areas?
I suppose sometimes we may see a boat out with rods that should not be there, but they tend to stop activity once we're there. I think with Tutukaka especially, it used to be a big place for game fishing before the marine reserve was put in place about 20 years ago. And so there was obviously a community shift from big game fishing to then it becoming a MPA. So I think in terms of, but we don't tend to, I think maybe because we're on a dive boat, we don't tend to see any illegal fishers. I suppose the other thing would be is that even with artisanal fishers or recreational fishers, there is normally a catch limit. So with spearos and stuff, you know, you're allowed to take a certain number of snapper. They have to be a certain size, or it's the same with scallop season. So scallop season opened up on the first day of spring and you're allowed a certain quota. I think in terms of, I went to diving for scallops on the first day of this season, and they were very abundant. There was lots of them. But then I heard from my freediver mates that actually in recent weeks, they went out again and they weren't abundant. And actually it was harder to find, and they were having to dive to depths of like 15, 20 meters to get them. So I think the main concern would be are the numbers, even within recreational limits, are the numbers maybe too high for the yield, because ultimately maybe the ocean isn't having a chance to heal and recover.
And if there's more locals using it, then they may be like, you know, tourists don't, I think it's more locals that are spearfishing in a lot of places. And so if there's more locals using the water, then that could be, an issue if everyone has the same limit and there's more people taking that limit. But otherwise, there doesn't seem to be much difference in the use of fishing and stuff. Like we've heard from other places where fishing inside of marine protected areas is quite a common thing right now in the absence of tourism as a deterrent. Good.
There was actually a news article yesterday, I think, maybe the day before, of some illegal fishing down. I'm not personally related to it, I just saw the headline. I think it was down in Kaikoura, which will be going to court, but it was commercial level fishing in an MPA off the coast there. So it definitely is still happening.
Okay.
And
so it'd be good to get that news story.
Yeah, I can ping you a link, or probably if you just Google Kaikoura illegal fishing or with an MPA or whatever. I know that Greenpeace are involved. They've got a huge amount of petitioning going on in New Zealand about trying to get cameras on all commercial fishing boats, because obviously they have observers, but that's only limited. And then does the presence of the observer change the behavior of the commercial fishers? Of course it does. So yeah, so it's definitely is happening. I can ping you the link, or
right.
Yeah,
great.
It won't be hard to find. It was, yeah, headline news. Well, in my world anyway.
In your world. Thank you.
I've also reached out to some of the sport fishing tourism operators around New Zealand, and I haven't heard back from them yet, but they might be able to help shed some light on that sort of thing as well.
Great. Yeah, it would be good just to keep track of it, because at a global scale, so the things that we've noticed, in fishing inside of marine protected areas, fishing with different fishing gears, recovery of seagrasses. So with the release of coastal and dune vegetation, so with the release of human pressure, walking on dunes and walking along the beaches, like plants have started to grow in many places. So I'm just trying to look for those common threads. So when we start to dissect the data, we're looking for common threads. But yeah, no, this is interesting. It looks like you've stopped recording, Ronnie. Is that right? Oh, no, you're still recording. If there's other questions, I don't need to take all the questions. Otherwise, we're always available. I'll let Ronnie close it off, if that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all so much again for the time that you took to deliver this excellent webinar and the preparation that went into it, and as well as your continued participation in the project. I'm really looking forward to how it unfolds. We will be kind of doing another version of these webinars, to be determined when, but at some point through the project, to give an update about what's been happening, about what we've been seeing. You'll of course get another chance to update those in New Zealand, what is happening in your region. So thank you again so much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.